Today, we'll go back in time and learn about the Ubliette, the most brutal torture method ever, and the medieval torture of unspeakable horror. Hello, and welcome to our channel. The Dungeon. The dungeon was built in the 9th century in Yorkshire's once Grand Pontifract Castle in England and is notorious for its vast network of oppressive dungeons. Throughout its history, the castle has witnessed its fair share of violence. In 1311, King Edward II imprisoned his cousin Thomas, Earl of Lancaster, and 20 other rebels before executing them. After surrendering to Henry Bollingbroke in 1399, Richard II was secretly transferred north from the Tower of London to Pontefract Castle. He's thought to have been imprisoned in the tiny dungeon beneath the cold, damp darkness. Historians believe that Richard was either murdered or starved. He died on St. Valentine's Day, 1400, at 33, paving the way for Bolingbroke to become King Henry IV. In the later years of the English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell, the victorious parliamentarians' leader, despised Pontefract Castle because it was the last royalist stronghold to surrender. To accomplish this, he made it his mission to wipe the court from the face of the earth. To achieve this, he begged the people of Pontefract to petition Parliament to have the castle demolished. The locals were eager to support Cromwell's plans for them. It was just a reminder of how many times the town had been pillaged by soldiers marching through on their way to the castle. Their homes were robbed, their men were killed, and their women were raped. Cromwell's devastation began in 1649. The ruins of Pontefract Castle can still be seen today. Behind what remains of the castle's once magnificent curtain wall, some 35 feet below ground, lie the castle's dark and depressing dungeons. Chillingham Castle, originally a monastery, was strategically located on the border between the feuding nations of Scotland and England. Henry III bestowed the manor house on the great family in 1246. In 1344, King Edward III gave orders for the castle to be upgraded, and it was transformed into a fortress complete with battlements, a torture chamber, and dungeons. The merciless hammer of the Scots, King Edward I used Chillingham dungeons to imprison his captives who were tortured, not just Scottish soldiers and spies, but also women and children. Many had their arms and legs broken before being dropped 20 feet through a trapdoor into the dungeon below, with only one tiny arrow slit of light penetrating the thick walls. The poor prisoners were left to starve, becoming so desperate that some resorted to eating their flesh. According to legend, 7,500 Scottish prisoners died in Chillingham, and their bodies were dumped into the lake. The term dungeon comes from the French term donjon, which refers to a castle's excellent keep or central tower, rather than an underground prison. Cachot is the French word for the dungeon. The central keystone donjon was usually the most robust structure in a medieval castle, surrounded by thick stone walls. Because these houses had few windows, they were ideal for use as a prison in the 11th century. Early castle keeps were typically square, but the use of battering rams and the damage they could inflict on a castle in the 12th century led to the construction of round towers. A round structure was more brutal to the damage being the most secure part of the castle. In the early Middle Ages, the excellent keep was where the lord and his entourage would lodge and was the perfect place for them to take refuge if the rest of the castle was overrun by enemy forces. Still, eventually, this central structure became the ideal stronghold for securing valuable items or important captives. Ultimately, the term dungeon came to refer to any jail within the confines of a castle, but it was most commonly used to describe underground people. Although not initially built for this purpose, these basement areas did make perfect prisons during the early medieval era, when imprisonment was not a thing. It was more common to find, mutilate, or execute criminals. However, during turbulent times of war, it was frequently necessary to detain political prisoners for negotiation and inducement. Even so, only the most dangerous captives would be held hostage for extended periods. Incarcerating common criminals was not worth the effort or expense. The Ubliette. It would appear that being imprisoned in the Middle Ages was not a pleasant experience, even though these lords who were held for ransom were provided with comfortable lodging and treated pretty well. Life in a castle prison was a terrifying experience for most people. Tortures like broken bones from racking, dislocated fingers from thumbscrews, and branding from red-hot pokers were all accepted forms of punishment for the medievals. A jail cell that could inflict agony, such as the oubliette, or forgotten room. Many of those thrown into this hellhole would never see the light of day again. The oubliette, a prison made from a cylindrical stone hole, was a small vertical shaft that was probably difficult to turn around in, let alone kneel, sit, or lie down. Many of them were underground, creating a dungeon within a dungeon. This meant all the water and debris from everywhere else would seep into the hole, making it cold and damp. A rope was used to lower them into the shaft. The prisoner would have been forced to stand in the dark, bottomless pit until they were freed, possibly on the rotting corpse or bones of the previous unlucky visitor. Some prisoners were left there for weeks while receiving a small amount of food and water regularly. For others, the torment lasted only a few days, as they were left to starve and die. Imagine the psychological terrors as the trapdoor above them, which was too high to reach, closing and plunging them into the claustrophobia and darkness of the blackness, standing in fetid water with only rats for company. This heinous prison's name is derived from the French word oublier, which means to forget. It was used throughout the Middle East and Europe. The Bastille in France was notorious for using oubliettes, as was the Rumeli Hisari in what is now modern Turkey. During the 100-Year War, the Bastille, a medieval French fortress, was built to protect Paris from an English attack. In 1370, King Charles V of France expanded the citadel, adding dungeons beneath its 6 new towers. The Rumeli Hisari, also known as the Throat-Cutter Castle, was built in the mid-15th century on the European side of the Bosporus Strait, in what was then the Byzantine city of Constantinople and is now known as Istanbul. A secret doorway on the 6th level of the tower led to a deep hole purposely built into a thick stone wall. When an unsuspecting prisoner was pushed through the door, he'd fall 13 feet to the bottom of a bottomless dark hole, still alive, but most likely severely injured, and be left to rot. Another tiny cell, measuring only 4 feet square, was located beneath the White Tower in the fortress of the Tower of London. The average adult human couldn't sit, stand, lie down, or find any other comfortable position. The cell was given the amusing moniker Little Ease. With no windows, the prisoner was forced to crouch alone in complete darkness and increasing agony, sometimes for days or weeks, only to be released for interrogation and torture regularly. Guy Fawkes, who was involved in the failed gunpowder plot on November 5, 1605, was imprisoned. Usually, noble prisoners were kept under house arrest and given chambers, possibly in the keep, and the freedom to roam the castle at will if thrown into the oubliette. Their time there would most likely be brief, as the punishment was used as a torture strategy to extract information. Conway Castle in Wales was built by our old friend Edward I, who, having conquered the Scots, also desired to destroy the Welsh. Conway was constructed during the conquest of Wales in the 1280s. The prison tower is accessible from the Great Hall. Here is a chamber that could have been quite comfortable if the prisoner had been offered the relief of a chair or bed, but below this is the true dungeon, a 12-foot bottomless pit that is connected to the rock with only one entrance being the trapdoor above. In 1440, Humphrey, Duke of Gloucestershire, and Ellen Poor imprisoned John Whitthorne in the Ubliette at Pembroke Castle. In the dark, claustrophobic pit, one was deprived of clothing and given little food. As if that wasn't bad enough, he went blind and developed other incurable illnesses. The Ubliette's Leap Castle in Ireland has spikes in the floor for even more agony. The small dungeon near the chapel was initially used to keep valuables. It was reported that workers discovered the remains of over 150 people during castle renovations in the 1920s. 3 cartloads of skeletons were said to have been removed. Just another reminder of how many oubliettes exist and how widespread this form of cruel and unusual punishment was among medievals. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more, please subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified.